So, hello to Mark Lakeman. Thanks very much for joining us on International Permaculture Day. I'm Mike Grenville from Transition Forest Row in Sussex, and Mark is co-founder of City Repair in Portland. He's a permaculture teacher and designer and working with the Planet Repair Institute that you also co-founded. I think that's is a fantastic name. Tell us about how you got involved in permaculture, please, Mark.
Right. Well, I think like a lot of people who have been doing this sort of thing for a while, I kind of got started on my own path, and it wasn't until later that I realized I was actually involved with this movement and helping to contribute to it, even before I knew the name. Actually, in the early 90s, in the early 90s, I left corporate career in design, architecture, and planning. It was a huge toxic waste cover-up in the firm where I was working, and I just thought, well, I've really got to sort of go back to the beginning and take another look at this. And I decided to travel and visit many different indigenous cultures to look at the relationship of people and their place, people to their community, and leadership to landscape. And so after many different cultural immersions, I ended up in a sort of pre-industrial context and ended up learning and also unlearning a lot. But though I didn't know the word permaculture at the time, I was looking for a sort of multi-dimensional, sort of integrated cultural context where whole family, all generations live together in very close relationship to the land, and kind of living according to their own perspective and having their own mythology, their own language, their own way of kind of creating a basis for an economy, as well as, well, really a whole cultural context, including how they grew their food and made their various items. And after being there, well, I went there to derive patterns, and I wanted to bring them back and test them in the urban environment. And sometime after having undertaken that, I met Penny Livingston, and she explained to me that what I was doing was actually applying the patterns of permaculture in the urban context. And she said, certainly what you're undertaking is the concept of repair. You're enacting it, though, upon people themselves. And so what I would say to you now is that, well, what I've found is that just as Mollison observes that this stuff is really sort of ancestral and ancient, you can definitely see now that people who live in a place-based context immediately start building relational networks, just as permaculture is all about engendering relationship. And they start doing things for mutual benefit. The whole sort of set of suppositions and sort of the beginning point for how people enact culture building in that context is entirely different than assuming that we're separate, that we must be in competition, that we must exploit each other, and that sort of thing. So, you know, now that I have actually able to work with other people in the permaculture movement and have this whole body of information available, we can take it and run, which is what we're doing now, not only in city repair with the village building convergence and the spread of city repair to many other cities across the country and the world, but also now in the new Planet Repair Institute project, which is the most exciting thing I think I've ever worked on.
So tell us more about Planet Repair.
All right, well, Planet Repair sounds like quite a grandiose aspiration, and I think that it is, but it's something that I think everyone really must be thinking about at this point. But it's actually about putting the challenge into one's lap at a doable scale. So what we've created is an utterly accessible model, a low-cost or no-cost model for doing things. You know, it's really, I mean, since we're in the United States here, we have to come up with a way of helping people to become engaged even if they're utterly selfish and complacent. So we need to figure out ways to get people off the couch, at first, of course, out of their own self-interest. And so we've developed this model which really enables anyone to access it and start anywhere, no matter where their heart or their consciousness is. So if they're selfish and they're myopic and small-minded, they can get started at the scale. If they're hugely of service and they want to save the world and they love everyone, they can start also at the same place. So Planet Repair starts with a typical block scale. And our main project is called Block Repair. And what we've done is we've said, aha, well, we're looking for an antivirus, so we need to look at the prevalent fabric of the colonial infrastructure. We want to be subverting and transforming the colonial infrastructure, of course, of the city-state model that's been expanding across the world, consuming everything in its sort of path. So within that fabric, if one block wakes up and creates an outstanding model that pumps out in excellent stories that are inspiring and beautiful and of great benefit, demonstrating how to do things of utterly no cost or low cost that satisfy people and bring people together who are conservatives or liberals or progressives or who have no interest whatsoever in the political arena. These are the sorts of stories that can travel. So we've been basically tearing up this one block, and then all these other blocks around it are being affected. And people are tearing up their lawns, and they're taking down their fences, and they're creating saunas and getting naked. And, these are the sorts of things, of course, you really want to be doing when you're happy and healthy. But we're building, of course, out of the most sort of low-impact, natural and recycled materials and all that sort of thing. But, we understand that we're practicing grassroots democracy, which, of course, at the same time ends up looking a whole lot like anarchy because everybody's in charge. And you're engendering all this mutual understanding and building all these layers of stories. So planet repair is really to say the planet, everybody on the planet can only act where they are, and they can only use their own hands. And maybe they can affect policy, but they can actually act directly with a minimum of process and a minimum of meeting and a maximum of impact and direct action. So we're working with the neighbors all around the house and transforming their yards and transforming their environments and bringing in all these students who are doing design projects for all the neighbors, and then they're implementing gray water systems and water catchment systems and tearing out walls and putting in little sort of amenities and even working with disadvantaged people and kids who need mentors. And so we're consciously mentoring, we're consciously building leadership, and we're unmaking social isolation. And this is what I've realized now, Mike. We don't have enough problems yet to fix everything. We need all the problems, all the problems need to show up in order for any of them to be fixed. We talk about stacking functions in permaculture. What we've got is a bunch of stacked dysfunction. And until we look at all of them systemically and all of them at once, we can't solve them all. We can only address a few sort of symptoms at once.
There's still too much comfort around, and people can live in their little bubbles. It's only when that's not possible anymore that people will say, oh, we have to really look at this and come together.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. And I think, the lovely thing that we're finding is that no one person holds the keys.
Yeah.
And as each person comes out of their bubble or gets off of their couch, they add another piece, an essential piece to what is missing.
Distributed intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also sort of cumulative. And of course we're talking about common knowledge, but it's not going to become truly common until all the pieces are in place.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely amazing, all the things that we're learning. And we've got a woman down the block who has just dozens of birds in her house, for instance, and we're trying to figure out a way, to sort of have all the nutrients for the soil that we need. And it turns out birds produce, I believe it's phosphorus. And tell me if I'm wrong, but now we have a lot of birds we discover who are actually pumping stuff out. So we actually have a supply in the neighborhood, and she's quite happy to be participating. But every single neighbor has a piece like that that can contribute, and it's either stuff that they understand or a resource that they have. So that's kind of planet repair. It's very much along the transition town model, but we are absolutely flying here now.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's really inspiring. So, do you have a message then to sum that up for International Permaculture Day and your vision for the future?
Well, the thing I'd like to say to people on Permaculture Day is that what is exciting to me about permaculture is that it seems to have no limit to its implications. For anyone who wants to become engaged in constructive solutions, they can bring their own sort of point of entry into it and add their own piece and they can actually come in, and as I've seen, people without high school educations or college educations catch fire and their innate intelligence becomes activated, and they actually can aspire to leadership and very quickly become a leader in this movement simply through their enthusiasm and their aptitude, which sort of says a lot. But that's one of the things that's most exciting to me, is that once we take it into the social level, and therefore more strongly into the cultural sphere, then its limitless possibilities become evident. But I think, one more thing I'll say is that what is so compelling to me, and that I'm watching in other people around me, is that people who are innately integrative are attracted to this movement. People who want to pull things together, and they're not satisfied with resistance merely. Yeah, they're interested in resistance. They're okay with fighting sometimes, but mostly they want to create their own direct solutions. They don't want to wait around for world peace. They want to inhabit it now through every step forward that they take. And this is the thing that I love. The people that I'm meeting, that I'm knowing, and I'm nurturing and cultivating, these are my dear friends for life. They're the people that I'm falling in love with. They're the people that I'm going to have a sense of continuity with through the rest of my life. And so the rewards are ultimately not just, potentially global. They are dearly personal and utterly satisfying. And so I welcome everyone into this movement to join in this sense of possibility and joy.
That's fabulous. That's so inspiring, Mark. I've been talking to Mark Lakeman, who's the founder of City Repair and the Planet Repair Institute. Mark, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike, to their community and leadership to landscape. And so after many different cultural immersions, I ended up in a sort of pre-industrial context and ended up learning and also unlearning a lot. But though I didn't know the word permaculture at the time, I was looking for sort of multi-dimensional, sort of integrated culture. Actually, in the early 90s, in the early 90s, I left a corporate career in design, architecture, and planning. It was a huge toxic waste cover-up in the firm where I was working, and I just thought, well, I've really got to sort of go back to the beginning and take another look at this. And I decided to travel and visit many different indigenous cultures to look at the relationship of people and their place, cultural context where whole family, all generations live together in very close relationship to the land, and kind of living according to their own perspective and having their own mythology, their own language, their own way of kind of creating a basis for an economy, as well as, really a whole cultural context, including how they grew their food and made their...
So, hello to Mark Lakeman. Thanks very much for joining us on International Permaculture Day. I'm Mike Grenville from Transition Forest Row in Sussex, and Mark is co-founder of City Repair in Portland. He's a permaculture teacher and designer, and working with the Planet Repair Institute that you also co-founded. I think that's is a fantastic name. Tell us about how you got involved in permaculture, please, Mark.
Right. Well, I think like a lot of people who have been doing this sort of thing for a while, I kind of got started on my own path, and it wasn't until later that I realized I was actually involved with this movement and helping to contribute to it, even before I knew the name.